Today on the World Report, we focus on the situation in South Sudan. We highlight on the humanitarian crisis, the peace process, the impending election that is just around the corner. And with me in studio, I'm joined by Rajab Mohandisi, a rights activist with the People's Coalition for Civil Action in South Sudan. Thank you, sir, for creating time for us.
I'm happy to join you.
Now, Sudan should be a country full of hope 8 years after gaining self-rule. And we can see what is happening there right now. I mean, what is your take on this?
Well, thank you. We are in serious crisis, which started in 2013 with a civil war, and the civil war continued and got into multiple other civil wars. And so as it stands now, we are still struggling with the effects of the war and trying to address the political crisis in the country. The effects of the political crisis and the civil war have been massive displacements of populations and massive humanitarian crisis that has continued to increase each year since 2013 to date. And we also have a situation up north in Sudan that has resulted into serious humanitarian crisis, and we have influx of both Sudanese refugees and South Sudanese returning from the Sudan. And so for 2024-2025 humanitarian response plan, we have over 75% of our population in need of humanitarian assistance, and over 50% of those are in critical need of food assistance.
Listening to you, sir, I can hear some regrets. Do you think it was a wise decision for South Sudan to break away from Sudan?
Well, amidst all these challenges that we face, one thing we do not regret is becoming an independent state. This was the dream of our people since the colonial time. And by the time Sudan was becoming independent in 1956, our people had real concerns about the nature and future of both Sudan and South Sudan in the post-colonial era. And our people have always advocated for an independent country. And that led to several civil wars in 1955, just before Sudan became independent, and also in 1983, which culminated in the signing of the comprehensive peace agreement, actually signed here in Nairobi. And that agreement granted us the right to self-determination, and we voted for independence. And our belief is that becoming an independent is the realization of the dreams for which millions of our people gave up their lives to create our country as an independent country.
Let's talk about the humanitarian crisis. At least more than 7 million people who will be facing starvation. Just paint a picture to us.
Well, you know, first of all, our country is a country that is blessed with fertile and abundant farmlands. And we're blessed with lots of domestic animals. We have all of this. And so food shouldn't have been a problem to our people. But because of the crisis, people have been displaced, and the country is made so insecure that people cannot engage in cultivation. And in addition to that, we also have natural disasters, floods displacing people. And all of these things combined resulted into this serious humanitarian crisis, where we have over 75% of our population in need of humanitarian assistance. And so we are talking about mostly women and children. They are in the villages, and so many are displaced. Some are in internally displaced camps being supported by the United Nations and other aid agencies. And others are simply desperately in their villages. And some are actually also cut off from accessing services which may be there in towns, and because of security reasons, they can't move across the towns from one village to another. And so people are locked up in a very desperate situation. And besides that, there is violence going on. And so from time to time, more population gets displaced. And we think that this situation affects people so much that In terms of children, many are malnourished in their hundreds of thousands, and so many die because of this situation. And now the crisis is in a situation that, with difficulty in reaching out the population because of multiple violence in different parts of the country, the ability of aid agencies to help people who are desperately in need is affected. And we also have the difficulty with the overall donor fatigue with the situation in South Sudan and other parts of the world. Each year you find more crises emerging in different parts of the world and demanding for more humanitarian response. And so the resources that were there supporting our people in South Sudan with the international community appears to be dwindling as such. And this is what happens in South Sudan. But we have millions of our people also in refugee settlements in the region. And they also face almost the same situation of food inadequacy. So it's a very catastrophic situation for our population.
Now let's talk about the peace process. A number of peace agreements have been signed and have been constantly been violated. What is different about this one?
Well, first of all, we regret that so many agreements have been signed, but they have not been implemented to deliver peace and resolve the conflicts in the country fully. And now there is this Tumaini initiative that is led by President William Ruto at the request of President Salva Kiir. And we think that first, this initiative emanated from President Salva Kiir, our president in South Sudan. And this to us is very important, that the president has acknowledged the depth of the situation in the country and initiated this peace process, as opposed to the previous peace processes which were initiated by regional leaders to address the crisis in our country. Secondly, this peace process, from the approach of the mediators, is focusing on the issue of lessons learned from the previous agreements that have not been fully implemented. And one of these lessons is the issue of implementation modalities that this peace process is focusing on, and is trying to find ways to provide implementation modalities that would help to address the failures that we have had in the past. And besides that, there are also arrangements as we engage in this process. We have called for a number of things that are a bit new. One is that we have seen with the current agreement that has stalled in the country, that the regional and international community abandoned this process so much in terms of really putting the necessary pressure to get this process moving. And we think that it is important that this current process mobilizes the regional bodies, particularly IGAD and the African Union, and also the Troika and the EU and the United Nations Security Council.
And are they doing enough?
Yes, well, they are engaging. They keep coming to this process, and we think that this is a lesson from the CPA era, where their influence helped to implement the agreement that led to our independence. Now, in specific terms with regard to this agreement, in terms of the negotiations, there is an attention on the issue of governance, trying to suggest that governance should be restructured in a manner that it is functional to be able to deliver on the outcomes of the agreement. And there is also a deliberate action to look at other issues like the issue of the violence that continues to rage in different parts of the country. In South Sudan, it is referred to as subnational violence, but we think that this violence is actually a national crisis of security. And so there is a particular attention to find a mechanism to address this level of violence. We are also thinking that these political agreements have not taken us out of this crisis, and so we should look at long-term programming in which the Constitution should be at the center of this process. and it should bring in more of our citizens to be involved in the peace process.
And I understand you're in the process of drafting a new constitution for the country.
Yes, this is a proposal being discussed in this peace process, so that more citizens are involved and they can also become grantors to this peace process to push for implementation once the agreement is signed. We also see the interest to work in terms of the parties building confidence to work together. As it stands now, the level of confidence and trust among the parties in the agreement in the country is very low, and so we think that it is something that needs to be addressed. So there are quite a number of things that are being done or discussed in this peace process to respond to the failures that we have learned from in the past.
Thank you so much for creating time for us.
Oh.
That has been Rajab Mohandis, a rights activist in South Sudan, shedding light on what is really happening on the ground, the humanitarian crisis, the elections that are pending, the peace process, the Tumaini initiative, and all that is happening in South Sudan. And that's the very latest from the global arena. My name is Herminegilda Mugeni. Good evening.